The midterm election season is getting started with a Democratic challenger in the 7th Congressional District. Covering most of Boston, the district's represented by Mike Capuano, recently announced as a candidate in a Democratic primary, is our guest, a Boston City Councilor at large from Dorchester, Ayanna Pressley. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, this is a solidly progressive district. You got a solidly progressive incumbent. You're a solid progressive. So why run now?
This is exactly why I'm running. I'm running because, at a time when our democracy is being dismantled all around us, I think it's important that we elevate and affirm democracy, and that is about choice. Furthermore, the issues that I have dedicated my life to, relative to income inequality, systemic racism, the housing crisis, violence in our communities, these issues are being exacerbated in the wake of a president, although I struggle to even refer to him as that because his behavior is so unbefitting of the office and the title, but draconian and bigoted and cruel, short-sighted and insensitive policies that are coming out every day. So the issues that I've dedicated my life to, forget my council tenure, but my life to, are only being exacerbated. And so if the issues are only becoming these systemic issues that I've dedicated my life to dismantling and to addressing and to mitigating the impacts of, if they're only worsening and the problems aren't new, then the only thing that we can offer that's new is a different approach. And I'd like to think I would bring that different approach and that different lens. And given the critical state that our country is in, it requires more than just good Democrats and allies. It requires advocacy, intentional advocacy. And that's what I'll be, a bold voice and an intentional force for change, which is what I've done in my 8 years on the council.
I want to ask you about that because you talk about a different focus or a different lens, and sometimes you're thinking outside the box of the city council's statutory legislative
Sure.
mandate. Helping young women, talk about what you were doing about that as a city councilor.
Certainly. That has been my heart's work my entire life, is advocating to ensure the safety, the development, and the wellness of girls and women. When I joined the City Council in 2010, I formed a new standing policy committee, which I chair, which will exist in perpetuity, which has been replicated by 2 other cities. It's the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities. So we work on big social determinant issues like poverty alleviation, violence in all forms, and reducing trauma. And then the heart's work of that committee is those issues that disproportionately and adversely impact women and girls. And so I've been able to take on some really complex social issues, and by engaging community, meeting them where they are, I really do believe that we are supposed to be in partnership with community always, that they should be co-leading and co-visioning. And so for every electoral and legislative success I've had, it's because I've engaged community in this way, whether it's my expected and parenting teen policy to strengthen pathways to graduation, to prevent dropout. Although our teen pregnancy numbers have declined considerably over the last decade, it still remains the #1 reason 1 in 4 girls is dropping out. And we know that the life of their child, academically and just their very existence, is directly linked to the education level of their parents, especially their mother. And so I worked with advocates and expectant and parenting teens and Boston Public Schools to revise that policy for expectant and parenting teens. Working hand in glove with that, also was able to get Boston Public Schools to adopt permanently as a part of their wellness curriculum a culturally competent, medically accurate, age-appropriate sexual health education curriculum. Because what I know, as someone who's fought for a nurse in every school, which we still don't have, which is why I continue to vote the BPS budget down, is for the offices I do visit that do have school nurses, the 2 issues that those children are dealing with are mental health challenges and sexual health questions. And these things are barriers to learning. So to me, all academic achievement and outcomes is contingent upon the health of the child and their readiness to learn, which is why I've continued to advocate for socio-emotional wellness supports, a school nurse, a guidance counselor, a social worker in every school, which is why I fought to improve the quality of school food, because with growing poverty and food insecurity for many of our children, their only opportunity for a nutritious and balanced meal is at school. But these are issues that are not just parochial and unique to Boston. That's why I've been working regionally to address many of these issues. It's why I'm running for Congress, Chris, because at the end of the day, the country is just cities and states knitted together. And those cities and states knitted together, the 7th Congressional District, these municipalities knitted together, are just neighborhoods knitted together. And I've been, fighting for neighborhoods and working with community my entire life. At the end of the day, what I know is that we all come into this world with our own God-given potential to make a contribution. Talent is equitably distributed, but opportunity is not. And this is the work I've dedicated my life to. And so I want to continue to dismantle those barriers to ensure the best opportunity in life for everyone.
Well, I'm going to hypothetically ask you, if you were in Congress today and you had to make a decision about the budget agreement, would you vote for it without any kind of safeguard for the dreamers?
In terms of absolutely not. We should not. We cannot play politics with the lives of children and people who have, because they had no other choice, who are here and who have made great contributions. That's not any sort of reciprocity, and we can't play politics with their lives. So,
I want to ask you about another thing: is your electoral record in Boston. In most of the most recent city council votes, you were #1. And I've looked at the numbers around the city. You've done pretty well in many places. It's not just all one constituency.
Well, thank you for stating that. Again, so I've had the humbling honor of serving as an at-large Boston City Councilor for the last 8 years. In the last 3 out of 4 elections, I've been the top vote getter, which I believe is not only a testament to my ability to be an effective advocate and to have a legislative record to point to, again, in taking on some of our most complex social and economic issues. But also it's a mandate from this electorate that has said the issues that you're working on are really transcendent. They are deeply resonant, they are relevant to all of us, and that is why I've been able to earn the confidence of voters throughout the city, which I should add, Boston is 70% of the 7th Congressional District. So it's not only just that this is a critical time for our country, and I want to be a bold voice and an intentional force for change and an advocate, an effective advocate for the entire district. It's also that I've already been leading in this district.
Well, another way a member of Congress makes a difference is by energizing the party and sometimes working in other areas of the country to make sure that the agenda is put in the spotlight and that people are mobilized. Do you think you can do that better than the incumbent?
Well, what I can tell you is that it has been my model of governing to do this work cooperatively. My mother, may she rest in power, very early on, there are so many reasons in our lives why we could have felt small and voiceless and invisible, but she made sure I knew that on election day we were powerful, and it was my responsibility to civically engage and to vote, and it was my right to have the best quality of life possible, affordable health care, quality education, to feel safe in my community, and that I had a job to do in partnership with government to make sure those things were being realized. So I've always governed cooperatively. And right now, given what is happening in our country, people are calling me every day saying, I feel helpless, what can I do? Our offices need to be places of convening. We need to be advocates, intentional forces for change in this inclusive movement building. We need to provide a space for resource. So, and I have governed that way already, and I certainly would continue to do that, to meet people where they are and to build an agenda with them and to work collectively to actualize that.
I want to ask you about one other choice recently at a benefit from Mass Poetry. People read a poem, favorite poem, and you chose Revolutionary Dreams by Nikki Giovanni.
Oh, actually.
What was that?
Nikki Giovanni is one of my favorites, but that actually is not the poem I ended up reading. I'm a true creative type, so that means I'm very organic. And so when I arrived at the event, I actually decided to read Langston Hughes's What Happens to a Dream Deferred. That was one of the first poems that my father shared with me, and it's really resonated with me. And again, it speaks to my earlier point that talent is equitably distributed, but opportunity in this country is not. Every Wednesday at the council meeting, when we convene as a committee in a whole, we recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and at the end, we say justice for all. And I always say someday. And so that's the work I've dedicated my life to, is getting us to that someday. Now more than ever, we need a bold voice, an intentional advocate and force for change to get us there.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Candidate for Congress in the 7th District, Massachusetts, Ayanna Pressley.